We are multitasking today. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome on our Sunday lecture. Very nice to have you guys here and very nice to be back as well. It's the first time, so I'm super excited. So today we're going to have a lecture from our friend Marco, and it's going to be about mediumship. And as always, we will start with our initial reading done by our friend Daniel.
Nice and loud, okay? Good.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes.
We're gonna read from the book Happy Life. Choose the company you keep. Bad company can be an important presence in your life.
Yes.
And affect its course. Nobody is so independent and complete that he does not run the risk of contamination from those who are involved in evil doing or vicious foolishness. Be kind to the wicked and mischievous, but do not let your behavior, activities, and philosophy of life get mixed up with theirs. Moral weakness also infect the unwary who gets too close to them.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So let's now close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus and all the beloved spirits that are present here today with us. Let's ask them to open our minds and our hearts for the lecture of today, that we may absorb as much content as possible for our own growth. Thank you. So be it.
So be it.
Thank you, Marco.
It's my turn. Yeah, it's my turn. All right. Good morning, everyone. Oh, Sandy made it. I know. It's so nice to see everyone back in here. I know we all had, for those of us who were driving today, it was a little bit challenging because of the road closures, but see, we're all here. And certainly the spirit population here is actually quite more significant than the incarnated population. So, so for all of us connected, thank you for joining us. And today we're going to talk about mediumship at Spiritist Center. And I wanted to talk about it in a slightly different way. So I'm going to be using Medium's book, the Spirit's book, as usual, right? The basic teachings from Kardec. And also going to bring some from the book, It All Happened in the Spiritist Center. And we're going to talk about that, Spirit Nora. And also some information about what we do here at TSS, right? As regarding mediumship, right? So first things first, started from Kardec himself, right? Who actually, that's what we study here in the Spiritist Center. In the Medium's book, Kardec writes something that I find a very nice introduction, right? If you want to think about mediumship, right? They can say, he says, so we can deduce for ourselves, right? And it's kind of reflecting on the teachings, right? The most favorable conditions for a society, like Toronto Spirit Society, for example, that aspires to attract the sympathy of good spirits, right? These conditions depend entirely on the moral character of the participants, right? So it depends on us, right? And may be summed up as follows. So he kind of I like to keep summarizing things for us I know he probably knew that we will have trouble understanding all of this. So he summarizes. So what is the summary? So perfect commonality of ideas and sentiments, right? So do we really want to bring and attract spirits that are morally elevated and are going to guide us and help us? So first of all, we got to be united, right, in sync with our thoughts. We got to be with common ideas and sentiments, right? Mutual benevolence, right? So it's not only that, I got to be here with some kind of a nice thoughts in my mind and willing to come here and, ask for help and be ready to receive help, but also I got to be benevolent to everyone around me and vice versa, right? So it has to create that atmosphere, spiritually speaking, right, that will allow good things to happen. Right? Rejection of every sentiment contrary to true Christian charity, right? So again, we got to reject, in other words, try to remove from ourselves everything that's contrary to the concept of charity, right, which is the love in action. Right? So it's a big summary, right? So if you put it all together, it kind of summarizes pretty much the entirety concept of the love, right? So you got to work together, common ideas and thoughts. You got a mutual benevolence to all everyone. Reject the sentiments contrary to charity, right? That's our task, right? If you wanna think about mediumship, right? So that's our intro, which is kind of the summary of the day at the same time. Okay. So in the Medium's book, Kardec also brings again a little summary of how should we practice mediumship, right? And he talks about something that we do here all the time. We call instructive meetings, right? Which is what we do. Like they have a specific goal, right? Which is to help, to learn, to get some help for people in need, right? So Kardec continues saying that these meetings, they're very different in character because they're only there's a very specific symphony of all the ideas and thoughts in your heart and mind, right? Just like we read in the beginning. So the first condition for us to have this meeting is that you got to be serious, right? And a strict condition for all participants must be surrounded by a favorable atmosphere, again, so that good spirits want to come. So this is a constant reminder in everywhere in Spiritism that if you really want to have that mediumistic interchange or connection, right, with the spiritual world, you got to have a favorable atmosphere. Right? And why am I bringing this over and over and over? Particularly because, this is not recent, right? So mediumship phenomena happen in humanity since humanity exists, right? So every religion has a different type of way or approach to mediumistic communication or interchange, right? So anywhere from societies from the past that used to have the oracles, right? They would ask questions, right? And the oracle was basically a medium, right? Which was giving passage to specific spirits. You have, even from more the native societies, you have this shaman or the doctor or the healer, right? All of those figures in society are indeed representation of mediumistic phenomena, right? They would heal people, right? They would have knowledge that were acquired from the spiritual world in many cases, right? They would have rituals, right, that would induce that mediumistic interchange either by music, right, by particular foods or prayers, or you can think about in different ways, right? So in every step in humanity, we have different types of mediumistic interchange. Now, most recently, that this concept is now wide understood, right? You can actually talk about almost anyone, right? The fact that we can have some sort of connection with the spiritual world. I think most people understand it. Some people probably more than others, particularly if you come from different backgrounds, right? But the concept is, it's becoming popular, right? In a way. And even in Spiritism, there are some groups in different places that tend to suggest that we should actually do it, do this mediumistic communications or interchanges like everywhere, like all the time, right? There was something almost like something like, like a daily thing, like, oh, let me talk to my spirit here and guide and see what we're going to do today, right? They kind of like a very selfish and silly type questions, right? Or people that go to places and pay to achieve some sort of insight about the future or life, or what's going to happen, is it going to rain today tomorrow, or am I going to get that job, kind of thing. So now, if you think about what Kardec is saying, all of those scenarios are almost like the opposite of what we're teaching or what we're understanding as here in Spiritism, because you need to have a reason to be there, which is not a selfish one, right? You need to be supporting that concept of mutual benevolence and charity, right, to everyone. You need a favorable atmosphere, right? So I get asked all the time, well, but I'm at home, and I sometimes I have someone approaches us and say, listen, I can hear things, I can, I'm a medium with maybe a natural medium, right? Haven't been trained before, or maybe obviously my mediumistic abilities are significant such that I can see, or I can feel, or I can hear something, and I do it in my house, and I start writing things, and I'm like, are we sure we're having the favorable atmosphere that Kardec's talking about here, even in your home or in your work or in other places? That's the question that I have all the time, and that's the question I ask. So if you're not doing it in a safe, favorable place, with the right intentions, right, with the right mindset, and supporting everything that Kardec is talking about here, then you may not be attracting the elevated spirits that you think you are, right? And then, yes, mediumistic phenomena happening every time, like all everywhere, but do we really know what we're tapping into, right? And that's the big question, because you're exposing yourself to some sort of influence, right, that you have very little control of if you're not in the right place in the right time and for the right reasons, right? So that is a little bit complicated for some people, but I think for us here in Spiritism, if you really follow what Kardec teaches, which is very important, then that will be like a baseline, right? So when we're going to have these communications in a safe environment, safe atmosphere, favorable, with the right intentions, right? With the right, and then he says here in the beginning, see, he says again, rejecting every sentiment contrary to charity, right? In other words, we're doing this for the sake of good, right? To people, right? And he continues, right? So the seriousness of the meeting, right? It is kind of popular culture that, you can gather a bunch of people around today and, start some sort of meditation and start doing things and put a pan on the table and the pan moves. We still have that happening kind of, many places, right? Does that happen? Definitely. There's about 3 to 5:1 ratio of spirits all around. So anywhere, like anyway, 2 and 3 to 1 ratio of spirits, disincarnated to incarnated spirits. In other words, like anywhere you are, if you look, there's 100 people, there's likely going to be 300 spirits or more, right? So anywhere you are, there's going to be a spirit that's going to make fun, and you want, hey, let's join this pen moving thing here, right? And some of them have the ability to use the fluidic, the more animalized or materialized energy from people in that room to actually manipulate that and make objects move. That is easy. That's not, that's like basics of spiritist phenomena, right? But is that something that is a favorite atmosphere? That's a good reason for? Is it serious? Those are the 3 questions that Kardec asks all the time. If the answer to those are no, then you're going to get exactly what you put into it, right? If your intention is to make fun, you're going to be made fun of, right? That's pretty much how it works, right? Because the spirits are not very different from us, right? There's all this grade of evolution out there, right? And you got to be very careful about these things, right? For example, Kardec says, a gathering is not truly serious if it's not concerned with worthwhile subjects and the exclusion of all others. Moreover, mediums who are bothered by criticism really have no reason to be, and this is important, since their personal vanity is not involved in the matter. Why am I saying this? Because nowadays there are some very popular mediums out there, right? Actually, you can I actually received an email from a charity that actually I support by running and doing activities, and this charity is actually now being supported by a medium, which I found actually quite interesting. So the medium is going to a very popular place in Hamilton and kind of giving free sessions, right? So you come, right? Yeah, and then the medium will, I don't know, write letters or say things, and that's actually a popular thing. And there's the website for it, and then the medium is actually donating whatever they receive to that charity. So I found it kind of interesting. But so the concept is this medium, obviously someone who has some sort of extensive mediumistic capabilities, right? To be able to listen, to read, and understand. Is kind of just sitting there in the room and just kind of writing things for people and doing some sort of mediumistic exchange, right? Now, what's interesting is that when I found this kind of very, very interesting. So I went online. I said, let's figure out what's happening. So I realized that this is actually super, super common, and I didn't know. So there's actually hundreds of this particular gatherings happening in Canada and everywhere in the world, right? But I was kind of curious about being in Canada, in which you would go to this mediumistic meetings, and you're going to get something, I don't know, a letter or something, right? You go get something, some information, I guess, about someone, right? Or just to see the phenomena, which is, maybe very interesting to some people, right? Now, the other thing I noticed is that when I was Googling it, there's also obviously some criticism to that, right? From all sources, like not only from us, but from society, from the ones that don't believe in any ways. And I could sense when I was Googling and reading news articles about it, that many of these individuals would be very sensitive to criticism, right? In a way that if you criticize, it's almost like their vanity gets in the way, right? So when I was reading that, and then obviously the spirits would kind of give me a hint, right? And then I was reading the Kardec, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's happening right now here in my neighborhood, right? Because I could not make that connection. Now I realize exactly what Kardec's saying. So what Kardec's trying to say is that, when you're working in mediumship, like when you're a medium and you're doing things, it's very easy, if you're not understanding what you're doing, if you're not prepared for it, that you're going to be you're going to get your pride in a way, like you're going to get your vanity in a way. Like it's like, I'm a great medium, like, oh my God, see, I'm doing this amazing communications, and none of that is yours, right? That's the kind of silly thing, right? Because realistically, you're being like a little telephone there, like you're being that connection, like the interchange, right? The information is going through, but the information is not yours. Again, the quality of the information depends on you, obviously, because you can actually influence that. But you can also tell if the medium is really following what Kardec is doing by exactly how they respond to that criticism, and how do they understand their role. So it's just like a little comment that I found kind of interesting. Right? So for those who don't know, I'm actually a scientist by training. So I have a research lab at U of T. I have many students, and that's my life. What I do mostly is to review evidence and write things and criticize people work. That's kind of what I'm trained to do in a way. And I was reading for this lecture, and I had this click in my mind. It's like, so thinking about managing conflict of interest, right? Because I was submitting a paper for publication this week, and obviously we have to write this conflict of interest clause, basically saying that we don't have any conflict with any companies or anything, or financing, whatever. Like this paper, whatever's in this paper is based on the results of science alone, so I'm not biased, right? And then when I did that, so it was Wednesday night, and then I continued reading on the topic for the lecture today, and then I started to realize the incredible similarities between what Kardec was saying in the Spirits book, the Medium's book, and the conflict of interest from the mediumistic perspective, right? And for example, I'll give an example in our field, which happens all the time, right? So, so if I'm a doctor and I prescribe you a medication, right? And then the company that sells that medication provides me with any incentives, not direct, for example. They can pay my trip to a meeting, for example, in a scientific meeting, right? So even if that meeting is not related to necessarily to that medication, even if, even things are not directly related to each other, that incentive that the company gave me will create a possible bias, right, for me to give more of that medication, right, for my patients. And that is exactly what happens, right? And studies have shown that. So what the companies do then, they will try as much as possible to create, to give information in those meetings that will increase the rate of prescription of that particular medication, right? So they can actually profit from it, right? It's a strategy. It's like a marketing strategy, right? So obviously our colleges now and the university specifically require us even anything, I don't remember the exact value, but if like literally if they give me a pen like in the meeting, I actually have to report it, right? Because even that pen that costs more than $10, I think, I would have to report and say, this is actually a gift from company X, right? Just by any chance, if I'm publishing something related to something or working on something that is related to that company or that field, that has to be disclosed, right? So to avoid that bias. Yeah. Now think about in Spiritism now, let's think about mediumship. So imagine that you are delivering information to someone through mediumistic channels. So in other words, like you're just being the transmitter of that information, right? From the spiritual world to the physical world. And you're receiving anything to do that, right? So that is an incredible bias that you just introduced in that communication. Because as time goes, the good chance is that you're going to be, even if you're trying to do it in good faith, right? So let's say, imagine that I'm not talking about charlatanism, and I'm not talking about really sketchy things. I'm talking about someone who say, I'm a medium, and I'm thinking about that person that I saw in the ad, right? I'm sure there's no ill intent, right? I'm assuming that, but there's some monetary gains, right, involved in being that transmitting that information. So that information, you're the only one that has access to, right? Because you're accessing from the spirit, right? And you're the one delivering it. So that by getting anything to do that, you introduce the bias, no matter what. Even if it's an unconscious bias, the bias is there, right? Because are you willing to give like a better news versus a negative news? Are you sure that information is going to be completely rid of any personalism when you deliver it, if you're actually making some gains to do it, right? Would you be willing to do it more than you had to? Or are you willing to not give all the information? See, there's a lot of questions that arise from there, right? And at the same time, imagine if it's a really, really evolved spirit that say, I'm going to use this particular channel here to deliver that message. Will that spirit use a potentially biased channel to deliver that information? I wouldn't, right? Just think about it. It's exactly what we do in science, right? So if we're willing, like if I'm a journal, right, and I'm a very big journal, and I'm receiving those papers that have a potential conflict of interest, right? Would I risk that conflict of interest to disturb the message that I want to publish, right? I would say no, right? So that is exactly what happens in editor. I'm an editor too for a bunch of journals, and I can tell you, we take that in consideration, right? Depending on who we're submitting the paper. And I found it incredibly similar to what Kardec is explaining to us, right? In something that is a lot more tangible, right? Because basically it's like, if you're the channel of that information, you're passing that along from someone else, the quality of that information depends highly on you, right? Because there is an influence, right, from the medium in the message. And also, It depends on the environment, right? We talked about before, depending on the intent, right? And depends whether you're gaining out something out of it that can actually completely disturb that message, right? Even if things are not, and again, I'm not really talking about the ill intent, charlatan. I'm talking about really like a medium in general, right? Now, if you take that then and put it inside Spiritism, that can happen in Spiritist centers all the time, right? Maybe for different reasons, because we know we're not going to charge to do things in Spiritism. That's kind of a hard rule, right, for us. But what if someone is delivering a message and the bias is about ego, right? So it's not money. So instead of receiving money, the medium is receiving compliments. See, it's the same thing, right? It's just not monetary, but it's something that, it's like a feedback. Imagine that the medium is now delivering this message and doing things and helping a lot of treatments, and everyone's like, oh my God, you're so good. You're such an amazing medium, right? You do such these beautiful messages. That starts to evolve into that medium and creates a bias, right? Now that's when things start to get complicated now, because that medium now that has the bias of that fascination, right? So like you're saying that's stellar, it's amazing. That medium now is open to a ton of influence from the same spiritual world. And I brought one example here that I do find fascinating. It explains exactly what we're talking about. So Spirit Nora, in the book, It All Happened at Spirit Center, written by Cristiano, right? He cites an example where, like one of the examples that they come up in the book to explain this is that there was a medium in the Spirit Center that, was doing a good work and kind of, doing a lot of communications and helping spirits that were obsessed, right? So it was helping, very complicated situations of obsession. And then when that medium was given the passes, the spirits that were actually the obsessors would actually step away from the obsessed individual when the medium was actually doing the passes. So the person would actually get a lot better immediately every time the medium was actually doing it. They did it intentionally so that the medium would feel that he or she, in the case she, was actually, they had superpowers, right? So imagine this. It's like every time the medium would go there to the passes, right? Everyone that she was given the passes would actually immediately feel, oh my God, I feel so much better, right? So the medium was like, oh my God, I'm so good, right? And it was all intentional. There was all a plan. So the spirits would actually use that ego from the medium to disrupt the work of the entire house. See how that's done? And why did that happen? Because again, the medium started to have a conflict of interest, right? Because now she was being praised by being some sort of a superhuman individual, right? She could cure and fix things, right? All the time. And none of that was real. Like the spirits were doing it, they were stepping away every time it was her. And they wouldn't do it with the other ones, right? To create that conflict with other people now, right? And remember that the first thing that Kardec said in the Spirit's book is like, the unity of thoughts and actions in the meeting, that's what makes the meeting good, right? Is that us being all united. So by doing that to one medium and not to the others, the spirits at the same time were disrupting the work of that medium and also disrupting the relationships between the other people in the Spiritist Center. Because the other people started to be like, is this weird? There's something really strange happening here, right? The other people in the Spirit Center. And then they criticized her and said, hey, watch out. There's something really strange happening here. But by that time, that medium, she was so into it that the criticism was seen in a very negative way. Remember, we just talked about it. And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm a fantastic medium, right? I can actually cure people and do all sorts of things, right? And that created a conflict inside the Spiritist Center and then compromised the entire unity of the work by only working in one little thing, right? Now think about that, and think about the recent episodes we've seen throughout the world of mediums that are taking into a position of superstar status, right? So I have to say, like every medium that you see out there that is being highlighted as an incredible medium is already under the influence of fascination. Even, you know, even if they don't think they are, there is. Now they can still resist to it. That's fine, right? But we got examples to prove the contrary. For example, Chico Xavier is a great example. Why someone who has one of the probably the most incredible mediumistic abilities that we've ever seen in the last I don't know how many years, right? Why he was always saying, guys, don't thank me, guys, don't do this, guys, I'm not doing anything, guys, stop. Like he was saying this all the time, right? Why are you doing that? To protect from this. Because he knew that if he fell into the trap of being, oh my God, yeah, Chico's really amazing, we're going to do all sorts of things. And if he fell into that trap, all his work would go down the drain, right? Because he was going to be open to this particular type of influence, which is devastating in mediumship in general, right? That's why he was telling all the time, and he was humble. He was always, working super hard and keeping his job, not charging anything for it. He was strict about it because he was giving us the practical teaching that Kardec brought to us 150, 160 years ago. So he was really the epitome, like he was a representation of what true mediumship is, right? He was that example, right? And now if you compare that to other mediums that we know out there, there are, that their faces and posters everywhere being like, this guy's coming around, let's go, go around and see what type of magic he's going to pull out like this time. See, this is exactly what the spirits are probably culturing right now, just to slow our march of evolution. That's exactly what they're doing. And I think like reading the it all happened at the Spiritist Center for the probably like 50th time. And I'm now starting to think that there's probably a very specialized group of spirits that want to slow down the march of evolution. They are particularly targeting this. They're particularly going around and say, let's make this guy feel he's a really good medium just to disrupt everyone else around him, right? Because then you create this scenario where, it's like almost like a superhero status, right? But not only to mediums, like in Spiritism, you also see that in some speakers sometimes, right? That achieve this type of like a superstar level, right? Are they open to influences like this? Oh God, 100%, right? And we all fall for it because what we do, we see their lectures and their presentations. The first thing we do is try to say, oh my God, you're so amazing. Like you changed my life. Great, right? But be careful, right? Because that type of, if we exaggerate on that, right, we actually feeding into a cycle of fascination, right? That actually take down that person, right? So I know some people I can hear talk and I'm like, I feel emotional. It's like amazing, right? And I send my best vibrations to that individual all the time, right? But just be careful, right, with creating that superstar status into Spiritism, because that can be kind of serious. Okay, so still have a few more minutes. So in the same book, How It Happened in a Spirit Center, the very first chapter is a huge summary of what they call important warning, right? And I think I could basically just go through it, and we'll summarize everything I need to say. So I cannot say anything better than what's in here, right? So they start like this. They say, this is amazing. So that's why the spirits are saying, that's why we want to warn you. First chapter. Don't think it's a privilege to have some pages published. God, that's like a stab for everyone, almost like 100%. Like literally everyone Spiritist today wants to publish something. Like, it's nice, okay? So you go there and you read Kardec and you read Ronald DeAngelis. It's like, I'm going to write a book about the psychological perspective in Spiritism. What do? Like you rehash a bunch of stuff from Joanna, rehash a bunch of stuff from from Kardec and you publish this amazing book, right? Fine, right? So it's like you kind of, it's like the ego mom that breaks down food a little bit, maybe, right? And try to feed it into the babies. Okay, it's fine. There's a role for that in everywhere in science and research too. Like researchers, we write reviews of reviews and like more reviews of a topic that's been reviewed like 100 times and we publish it again and again. Yeah, that happens. Like in every field, it happens in Spiritism too, right? But this is the reason. Don't think it's a privilege to write those pages, right? Mainly because the ideas are not yours. Bingo, right? Depart from the highest. So in other words, you're being like one of the little end, right, that carries that tiny piece of leaf back to the nest, right? And be proud of being helping. Maybe be happy to help, but be careful, right? You're not really changing. You're not special, some sort of deity, right? That is now the expert on psychology, right? In Spiritist, right, Sandra? So next warning. So the opponents of good will certainly look for you, right? So yeah, every time you're doing some good work, there's going to be a bunch of spirits and incarnated people that will try to stop you. That happens all the time, wanting to annihilate the light that illuminates conscience, right? And Jesus talks to us about all the time. Remember, like not to hide your light, right? Remember we talked about the bushel, like where you put it over the table, That's exactly what he's referring to, and that's what the spirits are bringing back to us, right? So put your light out there, and obviously know that you're going to attract, things that will try to turn off your light, right? Be ready for it. It will take firmness and vigilance and prayer, right? Many people will bring praise, constituting one of the most serious obstacles in mediumship. So overpraising someone who's working in mediumship is the single biggest obstacle to mediumship development, because we'll open the doors to the process, what we call is a specific type of obsession, which is called fascination. When the person is so sure that they're so good that they're infallible, like the idea that I cannot fail anymore because I'm so good. I'm at that level. So every time you reach that feeling, you're doomed, because that's exactly how you're going to fail, by thinking that you cannot fail. Like the world's biggest army, will fail just because they think they cannot fail, right? That's the kind of the same idea, right? So always avoid them, right? And if you can't, report the merits of the Creator. Great example, right? What was Jesus saying all the time when he was curing? He was saying, and they say, "Oh, Jesus, you saved my life." They say, "Yeah, sure, come here. Yeah, I'm really good at this," right? No, he said, "No, your faith healed you, not me." Why was Jesus saying that? We know it. It's exactly what's happening, like the same thing, right? When Chico Xavier delivered the letter without telling anything, they're just kind of passing the letter to someone. "Hey, this is for you." He was like, pass the letter. It's like, bye. Like, that's not, I don't know. I don't want to know. This is yours, not me, right? "Oh, thank you, Chico." And he's like, no. This is from whoever wrote that letter. I don't even know what's in there, right? Stop it. I'm the mailman, right? He would say, right? Contenting yourself only with encouraging the continuation of the task. Of course, like if someone say, "Good job, keep doing this," take it, because that's what you have to do, right? Others will ask you for proofs about the immortality of the soul, demanding messages from disembodied friends or relatives. Our proposal is, with simplicity and, at least for now, general terms, the Lord has not authorized this idea, right? Faced with this, he always acts with honesty, saying that the matter is in the hands of the spiritual friend. So, we see this all the time, right? There's ongoing monetary, prices, right, for mediums that go out there and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the spirits exist, kind of thing, right? That is so silly. Like, think about it. Like, in anywhere in the universe, would an evolved spirit come down to prove themselves for someone who's making money to prove that? Like, it just makes absolutely no sense, right? Is this going to happen? No, it's not going to happen, right? And that's the kind of thing. So you will not lack accusers, right, to discredit your faculties. Don't worry, that happens to everyone, he says, right? The Spirit says. Our pages are covered with simplicity and love. Don't expect anything more than this, right? We're still wanting to witness many of the teachings you intermediate. Remember that. In order to succeed in mediumship, it is essential that you feel like a little servant. That's good, because what we do here in TSS, for example, we do our mediumistic meetings on Tuesday nights with the closed group to keep that unity, keep that everything we talked about that Kardec suggested to us, right? And one of the recurring themes when the group meets on Tuesday is that concept that we're like this tiny little servants, right? That come here to support a work that is greater, much greater than us, right? And we actually have evidence of that in the meetings, because many times the spirits are going to come and say, listen, the mentors will come and say, that particular individual that you helped today is part of a group of like hundreds of individuals, and all of them were helped, right? With that one single intervention you're able to do, right? But obviously, it's good, you feel amazing when that happens, right? But that you got to be aware of that super excitement, of that, again, that fascination that can develop out of that, right? Okay, so next. Don't think that you are in the possession of a splendid psychic faculty, right? In view of your debts, which are great to the divine laws, you will need to work hard in order to thank the Creator for the mediumship ability that you're actually able to use, right? Those mediums who have their mediumistic output publicly disseminated, right, assume a moral commitment to universal laws, and failure to practice the higher teachings in life will lead to painful consequences of such spiritual mediators. What he's saying is that if you're a medium out there and you kind of sign up for the mission to come down here incarnated and use that mediumistic ability to write books and to do all sorts of things, that's a huge commitment. And again, I'll refer to Chico Xavier, which I think is certainly the one greatest example that I can think about that is close to us, that represents that. Now, do we have examples of what happened? Yes, the book The Messengers by Andrea Luiz brings very specific examples of individuals who decided to come in this particular role and have failed and now are back into the spiritual world. And one of those that I actually find quite, I connect to very well is Acelino. So Acelino in the Messengers, he's back in the spiritual world, and he's obviously distraught, he's crying, he's feeling like he's just lost and he's done everything wrong. And they're all in this group of, it's like an AA group for spirits almost, right? Everyone goes around and kind of share their failures in a way, share their challenges and devices, and by sharing it, they're able to support each other and understand the problem a lot better. So I actually love that concept, right? So Acelino comes and says, and he's crying, like he's bawling, right? And everyone's like, Acelino, kind of what's going on? He's like, guys, my problem is bigger than all your problems. This is common in this type of approach, right? Because everyone will, say, and he described it. So I prepared myself for dozens of years, right? I went to school in the spiritual world just to learn how to be a medium, right? And we think, oh, mediumship is like, okay, it's like this little flash of light that comes to us, and that's it. No. Like we actually go to school out in the spiritual world, prepare like a whole existence there, just to come here and say, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, right? So that's what he says. I've worked, I prepared myself, I went to all the lectures, I did all this. So I was given all the support I needed to achieve my mission. And that's what frustrates him so much, right? He's like, I went to a family that supported me. I was introduced by friends to Spiritism. I got teachings from the Spiritist Center. I had Kardec books. I had all of this. And by the age of 18, I think, he's like, I had my full mediumistic capabilities ready and under control. So in other words, he was able to write messages, to participate in mediumistic meetings and all sorts of things, right? And then when he first started, he was doing really well in the Spirit Center, and then all of a sudden, he felt that he was so good at it. he was so good at it that he needed to be compensated by his abilities, like his own abilities, which are being good at it, right? And that is the process of fascination that kicked in, right? That he was like, oh, you're so good, right? That's everyone in the medium, everyone in the group was like, oh my God, do you see that medium? Oh my God, I want to be with him. Like, I don't want passes from anyone. I'm just going to go in the line that go to the passes of that particular guy, right? Because he's really good, right? Oh my God, no, I want to be close. No, where is he going to be? Oh, is he going to be in Connecticut tomorrow? I'm going to fly there just to be there with him and tell him how adorable he is and how good he is. And so that is the process of fascination kicking in, right? And then he felt like at some point, it's like, okay, this is real, right? I'm that person. So he started charging, right? For that. And then he started on small groups of people who have a lot of influence that would approach him and say, hey, medium Marcelino, can you come to our house and maybe we should come have dinner? Then he would go, right? And then they would say, Marcelino, but tell me about this, right? And obviously there's always a spirit that's willing to say gossip about things, right? That happens all the time. We gossip, spirits gossip the same way, right? So the spirit that had any connection with that family would come and say, yeah. And Marcelino's like, and they're like, oh my God, you know everything. Oh my God, you're so good. You know everything about our lives, right? They know nothing. Like the spirit was just gossiping to them through Marcelino, right? That's kind of silly, right? But that was happening. So that started. And then all of a sudden he got some gifts and got some this and that. And obviously the entire mission collapsed, right? Because the role for him would be to work with the people in need, with this obsession and helping people who are in depression and despair that come out of that scenario, right? That was the mission. It turned out to be a complete disaster. And then he disincarnated, and now when he got up there, the first thing he meets is like the guy that trained him to be a medium. Now think about this clash right in your mind, that you step in there in the spiritual world and you see the guy that dedicated like 12 years of their lives basically to teach you how not to do all that stuff, right? So that is the shock, right? That Marcelino is in shock. Now, the interesting thing is that Marcelino is one of the examples, but that kind of happens to every one of us, right? I have to say. But it is exactly what happens because we're not here by chance. Things don't happen because of this. Like we're all prepared. We all have a plan. Whether it's working on a mediumistic meeting or if it's working to being the medium of love, right? Which is basically sharing love. Isn't that the same concept, right? So the idea is that there are many different ways we're prepared to come here and have a function, a role into this entire tide of evolution that goes around the world. Every one of us has a role. Like maybe Sandra and myself and Angelo all are working on a spiritist on a mediumship meeting, but that does not make us different or special or actually anything. That actually tells us that we probably have way more debts than most other people, and we're like, okay, let's give you this chance. Go there and do this and see if you can kind of pan out of this, right? It's kind of the contrary of what people think, right? Or others are not involved at all with this, but they, in their work, in their house, in their environment, in their circle of influence, they have specific roles to make people better collectively, right? And that is also some sort of a mediumistic capability because you're being influenced all the time, right? You have your mentors that deliver messages to you, maybe not directly, right? Maybe you can't hear them as a voice in your ear, but you will certainly hear them through your conscience, right? You're gonna feel them when you're sleeping through your dreams. You're gonna listen them through friends that will come to you and say, hey, Marco, maybe that's not a good thing you should do, or maybe you should do that. There's a million different ways that those messages can be delivered to us, right? Not only through writing, through a medium, right? And typically the individual who is seeking to get a letter from above to say something, they've received that same message 500 million times before, right? But they don't listen to it, right? Because, oh no, I want to see the paper, right? I want a medium to come to me and tell me this. Like, in most cases, that is not needed or not appropriate at all. Okay. And just to finalize this warning here, right? So it goes on and on. Actually, there's a lot that they talk about, right? So he continued. So don't expect to have as spirit guides great names and figures from the fields of culture, religion. That is the plague of spiritism, right? We're gonna say, oh, my spirit guide is. It has to be something that everyone knows somehow. Like it has the same person all and over and over and over, right? In reality, is the spirit guides are just people that work hard. They actually don't want to give their names sometimes because why, right? Why? Why are we going to go to personalisms again, right? That concept of being, So we got to stop that tendency of being like, oh, my spirit guide is a famous spirit that lived 200 years ago. No, like that's important too, right? So remain anonymous is actually showing their evolution sometimes, right? You'll be tempted many times in different things, so watch out, right? But you have the resources to resist to those temptations because we have Kardec, we have Jesus, we have so many things that are written clearly in front of us, right? That we have access to, and we can, if we have any doubts, we can just go back and read it again, right? And to finalize, they continue that to be successful in the task of mediumship interchange with the spirits, it is essential condition that you never get involved in the commercial trades we talked about, and focus all your energies on your love for the benefit of the unbalanced spirits, obsessors, and the one who really suffer, right? In other words, he's telling us, like, we're here, we have this tendency believing that obsessor spirits are kind of evil, let's push them away from us, right? That's in the general population, that's probably how people think. Oh, I have this spirit obsessing me, I want to, get him out of here, kind of send bad negative thoughts to that, like get out of here kind of thing. And realistically, in most cases, those spirits have a connection with us. And the connections are very complicated in the stories. They're not as straightforward. And they're the ones suffering more than us, right? So if you really want to show how evolved you are, start to think about them as the people who need help, right? And not us. We tend to cry all the time, like, oh my God, this is happening to me and all those things. But realistically, there's a lot of other people that are suffering a lot more, right? And they need our compassion. They need our love. And if you really want to help the obsession, love your obsessor. Start by doing that. It's going to make a huge difference. I can tell you this. So when you're praying at night to say, please God, protect me from all evil, that kind of stuff. No, don't say that. Say, dear God, may all those people that are suffering be loved and receive all the blessings in the world, including my own forgiveness. And if I've done something, may they forgive me too. How about we start with that, right? So that's kind of the essence of the mediumistic interchange. So we're kind of running out of time, so I'll stop it here. And if you have any questions online or any comments.
We have one from Doug. He says, can these ideas be applied to any rare talent, such as playing a music instrument, having an athletic capability, or to an actor or entertainer?
Yeah, that's great. So there's slight differences here. So there are talents that you have to work really, really hard and study and dedicate your energy efforts to learn, right? To practice. For example, you can be a skilled surgeon, right? But you have to go to school, you have to go to do medicine, and have to practice. So that's the part you developed yourself, and that part you can charge for, right? But the concept that if you have a talent, you have to use it for the good of others, that is the essence in any aspect of life, right? And that goes to the parables of the talents, right? And in each way that you receive the talent, like you're gonna make it flourish. You gotta actually make that talent grow, right? To reach other people, right? To serve, right? So in that sense, yes, it can be applied to anything. It's like if you're a skilled pianist, right? You're gonna play to play. They're gonna be paid to play, right? But that also includes the fact that you should be doing things thinking about ways to improve other people's life too, right? So that's all part of the whole process, right? So if you're an athlete, obviously you're going to be paid to compete, but you can also make your ability a tool to help others, right? You can do two things at the same time, right? Now, if you hide your talent, then you got into another trouble, no matter what talent that is, right? And that's exactly what we got in the parable of the talents, right? You got your talent, you dug it down the floor, brought it back up, you just didn't never use it, right? In mediumship, the only difference is that the knowledge and the content you're passing on is not yours. So it is not something that you have to, go to school and work with and develop. No. So that information is not yours at all. It's actually coming from another individual. So you can't charge for that, which is not yours, right? So that is the only difference, right? But the concept of using it for the good of others is exactly the same. Yeah. That's it. Okay.
I think, Marco, maybe this is a good time to remind people they are here and
Yeah.
online that we are going to restart the mediumship study group on Thursdays.
Okay.
If you can do that.
Oh, yes.
I think it's going to start on the 20th, right?
So what time is it? Do you know?
We have
Okay.
on the website
Okay,
and
perfect.
also on
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
But it's starting, I think, on the 20th.
Okay, so yeah, so
On
Sandra's reminding
Thursdays.
me on Thursday nights, we're going to have the mediumship study group starting again, probably on the 20th. But if you guys have, you guys can go on our website and check. There's all the information there about time and starting dates for those who are interested. And if you feel you need any help, any support, anything related to any stress or anything that's going on spiritually, non-spiritually related, and if you want to talk, we are here to help you. So you can also check on our website how to connect to our group fraternal meetings, and we can support you through there. And if that is related to anything that we can help you through our mediumistic meetings, we certainly bring it to the mediumistic meeting, and then we have a discussion of the case and the situation there. And if there's something to be done, like an obsession or anything, that's how we deal with that situation. So we do that here at TSS. Most spirit centers do, and we first start by kind of getting to know the situation to the fraternal meetings first, and then kind of, if we need it, we move that along to the mediumistic meetings. Okay, on Tuesdays. And any other reminders, Sandra?
I think that's it.
No? Okay. So thank you all for the internet who's followed us, and we're gonna now get ready for the passes. So you can do help, Angela? You gonna help too, Sandra? Okay, perfect. So yeah, we can split it over there, and I'll do the prayer here quickly